Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we got this one right because in Colorado yesterday, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled that President Trump's name cannot be on the ballot. Well, in the upcoming primary, but obviously, by implication, in the general election. And we had said, when the district court had ruled last month, which pretty much the district court had said, oh, President Trump had engaged in insurrection. However, he cannot be taken off the ballot because, according to the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, he is not an officer of the United States. And so the moment that she ruled that way, it was clear that she was actually throwing it to the Colorado Supreme Court. Let them basically say to her, no, you got this wrong. He is an officer of the United States, but we agree with you on the rest of it, that he engaged in insurrection. And boom, he's been taken.
So being an ex-president makes you an office holder?
It doesn't make any sense. So I want to just show you, in fact, first of all, let's just look at the wording of that.
I saw it.
Yeah, exactly. But
there was great violin. They could have violin music in the background. Okay.
So here we have the wording. It was enacted after the Civil War to prevent those members of the Confederacy to take office. But
even with this amendment, George, former Confederates did
take office.
It wasn't enforced. It wasn't enforced.
And President Andrew Johnson issued a blanket pardon for the members of the Confederacy. Yeah. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States. It would seem very strange if you say office under the United States and you put that, and the president comes right at the end of the list. I mean, you start off senator, representative in Congress, then elector, and then hold any office. I mean, you think, well, it's going to be very hard to believe that they meant that the president would be at the end of that list. But the assumption, I think, is that an office holder is someone who is appointed to office by the president. Doesn't necessarily personally appointed it, but essentially they are working for the president, and therefore, if you're part of the executive, you were hired by the president. And I think that's what they meant. But it doesn't apply to the president. Or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of the state legislature, blah, blah, to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort in the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. The problem was, of course, that this determination by the district judge in Colorado didn't come as a result of any proper legal proceeding. There wasn't a trial. There was no jury. There was no presentation of evidence. She just simply determined that Trump had engaged in insurrection, even though he hasn't been charged with insurrection, and he has certainly not been convicted of insurrection. So she just did it. Just the judge makes this determination.
Well, obviously, this was made in reference to what happened on January 6th. Fine. But no one involved in that has been convicted of insurrection or rebellion. Not one person.
Not one person.
One person.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And if Jack Smith, who's determined to get Trump, believed that he could make a charge of insurrection stick, he would have done it. He would have absolutely brought the charges of insurrection against Trump.
So if the Russians had blown up the Nord Stream pipeline and they knew it, we would have the evidence, right?
That's right. So this is done by a judge, and the only evidence she cited in her ruling was the findings of the Liz Cheney commission, the Liz Cheney, Adam, what's his name?
Yeah, the mini TV series, right?
Exactly, yeah, that's right. Adam Kinzinger and the rest of them. That's the only evidence, which was not even a proper committee, and it certainly wasn't any kind of a proper legal judicial proceeding as a trial would be. I mean,
It was a show.
Yeah,
it was
a show, exactly.
Oh,
and to use that as somehow evidence, probative evidence, as if this is somehow determined in a trial court. And this was the Colorado Supreme Court went with this. So here is this one, it's a blah, blah. In this appeal from a district court proceeding, the Supreme Court considers whether former President Donald Trump may appear on the Colorado Republican presidential primary. A majority of the court holds that President Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Because he's disqualified, it would be a wrongful act under the election code for the Colorado Secretary of State to list him as a candidate on the presidential primary ballot. The court stays its ruling until January the 4th, 2024, subject to any further appellate proceedings. Again, this has never been done. No one has just been taken off the ballot. I mean, people have been in prison and have kept their name on the ballot, like Eugene Debs. He campaigned from prison, but his name was not taken off the ballot. But
and also, we should point out to our viewers here is that this kind of legalese, which is very, very familiar, but there's something missing here, George, and it's called precedent. They would mention precedent, why they have come to this conclusion. They don't. There's no predicate for their thinking. None.
That's right. That's exactly right. Section 3 encompasses the office of the presidency and someone who has taken an oath as president. On this point, the district court committed a reversible error. And I knew then when she did that she was waiting for the higher court to come in and say, no, you're wrong. He is an officer of the United States. And therefore, I agree with the rest of it that he engaged in insurrection, and therefore he shouldn't be on the ballot. It's a little like when Julian Assange, you remember when the judge in London agreed with everything that the United States claimed against Assange, every single thing that they accused Assange of, she agreed with. But then she said, no, I'm against extraditing him because he's a depressive, he might commit suicide, so I'm against it. And you knew then that the Americans would immediately come in. Oh, no, we've got really first-rate psychiatric care that's available in the United States prisons these days. He will want for nothing in our prison system. And of course, the British High Court then seized on that, accepted all her findings against Assange, and said, yeah, we accept American assurances about the first-rate psychiatric care he would.
The ultimate pinky promise. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. The district court did not abuse its discretion in admitting portions of Congress's January the 6th report into evidence of trial. Evidence? What evidence? It's not evidence.
The January 6th report didn't have an adversarial side to it.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's the point about evidence. Evidence has to go through the adversarial process. You have to challenge every witness testimony, every a piece of forensic evidence. That's the whole point of the adversarial process.
And since then, a lot of evidence has come out that disputes any findings that came from January 6th.
That's right. Exactly. The district court did not err in concluding that the events at the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th constituted an insurrection. She just declared it to be the case. Hey, just a district court judge in Colorado declared that what happened on January the 6th was an insurrection. Oh, that's good. So you've done it. It's like an editorial writer, at some newspaper. Yeah, it's an insurrection. Well, that's it. That's good enough for me. The district court did not err in concluding that President Trump engaged in that insurrection through his personal actions. So she just determined that again. No legal finding.
So Trump has already been on trial, right? I mean, because exactly. I mean, how can she possibly know this if there has been no adversarial pushback against claims had been made. That's not how a justice system is supposed to work.
And you're absolutely right, because he had been on trial, because that's what you do when you're president. That's the legal proceeding for a president, which was the trial that took place in the Senate. So all of these issues were debated at the Senate. He was acquitted. That's it. You have no business then to second guess the Senate, because it's over and done with. That legal proceedings has taken place. He was acquitted. And then she said, no, I know better. The district court judge knows better.
And the Senate debate and vote on Trump's impeachment was political, everyone. It's in a very different realm. It's very different than a judicial trial. It's a political decision. That's why there's so many misperceptions about
right. But you're absolutely. But the Senate impeachment trial, that's the only mechanism there exists for trying a president for his official actions. I mean, you don't do it in a criminal court. You do it in the Senate.
But it's a political decision,
right.
because it's overturning the popular will of the people. That's why it is very different judicial procedure.
Right. But wait, that's right. But when he's acquitted, then he's acquitted. That's it. There isn't then, oh, well, we can bring in a judicial proceeding. You could, if he were convicted in the Senate, then you could bring in a judicial proceeding. But if he's acquitted in the Senate, then that's it. The case ends there. You can't then say, well,
they just want double jeopardy.
That's right. Yes. President's speech inciting the crowd that breached the U.S. Capitol on January the 6th was not protected by the First Amendment. Says you. I mean, what does that mean? It was not protected. Why?
Oh, the Supreme Court's already decided on this. I guess we didn't hear about it, George.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was a legal protest. People came to protest. He has every right to protest. He has a right to speak. I mean, it's like the notion that, the First Amendment doesn't apply. Of course, it applies to everyone. You have a right to speak. The constrictions on the First Amendment are very, very narrow. I mean, and we talked about this, the Brandenburg case, in which there's an imminent threat of violence. There wasn't anything of the sort on January the 6th. The sum of these parts is this: President Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3. Because he's disqualified, it would be a wrongful act under the election code for the secretary to list him as a candidate on the presidential primary ballot. And the Secretary of State has already declared her enthusiasm. Yes, indeed, I'm going to keep him off the ballot. You can count on me. And then he says,
yeah, because you know what, George, she wants to be the first to do it.
That's right. Exactly.
That's right.
That's right.
Because she's created precedent for other states to follow.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, they're all making these precedents. I mean, you got this horrible attorney general in New York who came up with this notion that you can declare someone to have committed fraud even though he hadn't defrauded anyone. Everybody came out ahead and made money from doing business with him. But nonetheless, he committed fraud. And then she's making history. And then that clown of a judge, he thinks he's making history. Then you have the judge in D.C., Tanya Chutkan, and she thinks she's making history because she's going to send Trump to prison. She's obviously that's what she's waiting for, to send him to prison. So she's making history. Then you got the woman in Georgia. She thinks she's making. They're all making history. They're all, hey, the history books are going to be writing about it.
George, when you and I were coming up, this kind of behavior was unimaginable.
Yeah,
unimaginable.
Right. It was. You're right.
We do not read these conclusions lightly. It's hard for me to believe. Okay, are they laughing when they're writing this?
That's exactly. It's very funny because whenever anyone says that, we do not reach these conclusions lightly, that means you are reaching them lightly. It's like you always know. Whenever somebody says, well, I thought long and deep about this. In other words, you didn't give the matter the slightest thought. It's a tell. It's the classic tell when you say the exact opposite of what was true. We are mindful of the magnitude and weight of the questions now before us. Well, and judging by the stupidity of these arguments, I don't think you are mindful. We are likewise mindful of our solemn duty to apply the law. It's very solemn. What law are you applying? There's no law. You're not applying any law. Without fear or favor. Get the cliche in as well. And without being swayed by public reaction to the decisions that the law mandates we reach. And then we are also cognizant that we travel in uncharted territory. And that this case, but again, when you do this, then you think, well, maybe you shouldn't be traversing uncharted territory. Maybe you should stick with the law, the Constitution, precedent. Don't go off on uncharted territory. That's not a great idea.
And you know, yeah, it is uncharted territory in the sense that they are encroaching upon the political process, which they should not be doing. This is what makes me furious. Okay, this is a they want to impede, disrupt, and overturn a political process.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because that's why you have elections. You know, that you have the people get to decide. You know, they get who
You don't go to a district court to find out, you know, who should be running the place. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, you know, where do judges, unelected judges, where do they get off deciding whom you can vote for, whom you can't vote for? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's such a fundamental violation of democracy. And again, I mean, others have made the point. If this happened in any other country,
oh, the State Department. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The EU, everybody, boom. You know, a judge decides, you know, whom you can vote for, whom you can't vote for. Boom, sanctions. We are also cognizant of which, but for our resolution of the electors' challenge under the election code, the secretary would be required to include. But for our resolution, this would include President Trump's name on the ballot. But then they come along. Therefore, to maintain the status quo pending any review by the U.S. Supreme Court, we stay our ruling until January the 4th, 2024, the day before the secretary's deadline to certify the content of the presidential primary ballot. So first they tell us that we're in uncharted territory, but we are without fear or favor. We're going to go where the law and the Constitution point us towards. However, we might get overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, so we're going to stay this ruling. Hey, I thought you had you without fear or favor, but now you're worried about the Supreme Court.
If they have any convictions about their conclusion in this, why are they putting a stay until January 4th? It's just absurd. Then why are you ruling on this at all?
Exactly. That's a good point. Why are you ruling on this? If a review is sought in the Supreme Court before the stay expires on January the 4th, then the stay shall remain in place, and the secretary will continue to be required to include President Trump's name on the 2024 presidential primary ballot until the receipt of any order or mandate from the Supreme Court. Is that the end? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very long ruling. We don't have to go through these. These arguments are really dumb, and you know, it's not worth paying any attention. But you know, I had the same experience whenever I read those rulings by like the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. You know, you get a headache because the arguments are so stupid, but they're dressed up in all this pompous legalese that give them a kind of a weight that they don't have. If you strip away the legalese, people can see this is a really stupid argument. It makes absolutely no sense. But and this all is, you put in a lot of Latin words that makes it even more impressive. But all the arguments are stupid. I mean, basically, you have no basis for this determination. no precedent for it, and you don't have any kind of evidentiary basis. There's no legal basis, no constitutional basis, and you don't like Trump. And then you decide, well, now I don't like him. I don't want him on the ballot. So now I'll come up with some legal mumbo jumbo to keep him off the ballot.
Yeah, this is uncharted territory. This is dynamite, George. This is so dangerous. It's almost, I'm almost at a loss for words for it. I mean, you are deciding the outcome of the next presidential election.
Right. Yeah.
A district court in Colorado.
Yeah.
Is determining the fate of the republic.
Right.
This is not, it's not supposed to work this way.
No.
Not the way it's supposed to work.
Oh, no. And again, I mean, because the Constitution is quite clear, you can be in prison. Even you're in prison, you've been convicted of something, you can still run for
my grandfather, who I never met, he worked for the mayor of Boston, Mayor Curley, and he was elected while in prison. Okay. And my grandfather was basically, let's say he was kind of a soprano type kind of guy. Okay, he got all of these really nice deals, a lot of corruption involved in it. Didn't end well for my grandfather, but he was that's the kind of people they were. He was elected by the people of Boston, Massachusetts.
Right, that's right. Do you think, Peter, that the Supreme Court will take the case?
I think they have to.
Right.
Because the longer they wait, the more that will embolden other secretaries of state.
Oh, yeah.
For non-Americans, the Secretary of State of each individual state runs the election rolls and stuff. It runs it's kind of like the Secretariat of the state. Okay, what font they use in official letters and stuff like that. It's really the paperwork people. Okay, but they have a lot of political power. They're not supposed. But it's evolved in that direction, as we can see now. But I think they have to, George, because if they don't, then other secretaries of state will be emboldened to follow suit.
No, without question. I mean, because there were already attempts to take him off the ballot in a number of other states, but the courts in the other states had said, hey, this is, we can't really get into this for the obvious reason. We can't just simply decide these things on behalf of voters. Colorado was the one place where they decided that, hey, we will decide this on behalf of the voters. So, if this stands, then there's no question they're going to move in a number of other states, which of course will then lead to tit for tat, because if they're going to start removing Trump from the ballot in one state after another, Republicans are going to start removing Biden's name in a number of states. They'll say, hey, Biden engaged in treason. I say, well, what's your evidence for that? Well, we got plenty of evidence. Look at all the stuff that James Comer has come up with. Biden engaged in treason. Let's take him off the ballot. So there would be a tit for tat. So I agree with you. The Supreme Court would have to get involved.
But George, this is like 1860, the 1860 election, when Abraham Lincoln won, and Southern states mulled well, we accept this outcome. And then the first state, South Carolina, said, nope, we don't recognize this, okay? And then there was that cascade effect, okay? One after another, the Southern states ended up in secession. But this is the same kind of, process here. It can be slow, but once it starts getting a momentum, then it happens. And then you have a fracture that is very difficult to fix, if impossible to fix. And then that will encourage other processes, okay, of separation, of rejection.
Right.
And you can't rule a country that way, not under these circumstances.
No.
That is why this is unprecedentedly dangerous.
No, I mean, if you get an election, and then if you had all these states that are going to take Trump off the ballot, and then you get the other states where the Republicans are strong and they're going to take Biden off the ballot, then what kind of an election are you going to have? I mean, you're not going to have any kind of an election. And then, who the hell knows where that goes? I mean, the one thing that I kind of worry about with the U.S. Supreme Court is that you've got the three liberal justices. They always vote as a block. So they're going to say, no, we don't want to take this case. So we know that's three gone. Roberts, he doesn't like Trump. you know, it's obvious he's made speeches in which he's clearly indicated his dislike for Trump. So he could well go with them. They only need then to pick up one more vote and not to take the case. I mean, I still think that they will take the case, but
you know, Roberts has been been such a detriment to the Supreme Court. You know, he's really bad judgment, and you know, and shielding the court. Now that you know all this dirt is attracted to the court, okay, and it's his fault, okay. It's and that was the last refuge, okay, and now that is is tainted as well. If they don't take it, then all I can say is, Roberts, you know, then it's on you. It's on you.
No, sorry. You're absolutely right, because of course, you know, we had the Dobbs decision that was leaked, and they never found out the leaker. I mean, it's inconceivable that they couldn't find the leaker.
Yes, we'll never know.
Guess what? Exactly. It's a small staff, you know, and the number of people who have access to opinions.
Well, it probably was a justice.
Yeah, could be. It could be.
That's my conclusion.
Yeah.
That's my conclusion.
Could be.
Well, that's a fair conclusion. If you're not going to do a reasonable, legitimate, obvious, understood investigation, then I put it on the court itself, the justice.
That's a very good
logical conclusion.
That's a very good point. And Roberts didn't want to create a fuss. But I think that, you know, what they did in 2020 when they didn't take that case, which was so catastrophic, you know, essentially just simply they got out of the way and said, "Oh, nothing to do with us," and they could have averted so much of the turmoil that followed that election if they'd have taken the case, made a determination, and brought that to an end.
You have to think counterintuitive about these things. If the court truly believed that everything was on the up and up, then disprove it to everyone. What you know? You've got clerks, you know, Laura Ingram's, you know, young versions of them to do the shit work. You know, what was it? What was the harm? Yeah. What was the harm of taking the case? Right. If they truly believe this is completely up and up, but you know, they because of the turmoil in the country, the court has to uphold elections. They should have erred on that side.
Absolutely. You had 18 states plus the president on one side. That's a large number of states. They wanted a resolution of this issue, and it was up to them. That's what the Supreme Court is there for. It says in the Constitution, when you have a conflict among the states, it goes to the Supreme Court to determine the rights and wrongs of any dispute. That's what they should have done. And by not doing it, by essentially failing on the job, I mean they played the biggest role of all in all the turmoil that followed.
But again, I don't want to sound apocalyptic or anything, but look at the decade prior to the Civil War. There was an abdication of responsibility of a lot of institutions. Everybody knew something bad's going to happen if things continue the way they are, and they didn't do anything about it. And then we had this horrific civil war, and there is a pattern here. Right. They just kick the can down the road. It's not my responsibility. Let the other branch take care of it. I'm not going to step in here. And because there's no upside for me. Very selfish thinking.
I absolutely agree. I think that's exactly the way these kinds of crises can develop. Because if this just is allowed to stand, and then one state after another starts taking Trump off the ballot, then you could well be just triggering a civil war. I've been very hesitant to think of in these apocalyptic terms. I thought, well, people will hesitate, but I don't think people will say, well, why should we hesitate? Why,
but I mean, let's talk about, what would someone be hesitant about or not hesitant about. But if this is a pattern and Trump is taken off the ballot, then no Republican is going to vote. They're just not going to participate. We're not going to participate in this.
No, but I think the issue is, okay, people are hesitant about using violence, understandably so. But if you deny them the right to vote, the one thing that they have, the one thing is, I'm a citizen of the United States. I have a right to vote, and then you're suddenly denying it to them, then why would people hesitate about using violence? Why wouldn't people say, well, hey, I've got nothing to lose. You've already taken this away from me. That, in other words, my right to determine how my country is run, how I'm to be governed, you've taken that away from me, then, I have to, resort to whatever I have. So that's when you get people start going to extremes, when you adopt these extreme policies.
But this is in the wake of basically institutionalizing and legitimizing and weaponizing censorship. So you're taking the First Amendment away from millions and millions of people. Now they're going for the right to vote. I mean, what do you got to lose? Come on! I mean, they're taking everything away.
That's right. We
can't even register our dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is why, again, that last decade before the Civil War, every kind of things began to slip. Okay,
right. Well,
and we're seeing that right now. Where MasterCard will say, well, I don't know, we don't like your politics. You can't participate in the financial system now. Okay, and if you say anything against Joe Biden, you're silenced. Okay, and by the way, you can't vote anymore. Well, what are people supposed to do?
No, that's exactly right. And the thing is about the right to vote is so fundamental, because everybody has that. I mean, you're a U.S. citizen. Even if you don't use social media, if you don't really feel that you have that much to say, but you do feel I have a vote. Every year there's always an election. There's a mayoral election, a congressional election, senatorial election, national election. There's always an election, and that's being taken away from you. Then people do resort to very extreme measures.
But more importantly, and you and I have talked about this in the past, is that the presidential election is the only election that the country participates collectively. It's the only thing Americans do. Pay taxes. You should pay taxes, okay? But politically, there's only one exercise that the electorate goes through in unison, and it's called the presidential election.
Because there is only one national office holder. That's the only one. There's only the president is the one, and of course the vice president, but there's only one national office, and everyone takes part in that. And given also this taking him off the ballot comes after a sequence of other actions against him. So people, people have been following this. All the criminal proceedings, the civil proceedings. You one after another, and everyone's got to play. Look, hey, this is the political establishment trying to destroy the guy we want to vote for. This is almost like a government has declared war against us. Of course, it has declared war against you. And well, what happens when people, if the government declares war against you, then people fight back. And I think, even someone like Jonathan Turley, and he's usually a very level-headed person. He's not given to flights of rhetoric. Said that essentially, what the Colorado Supreme Court has done is just simply, thrown a match into a kind of a powder keg. I mean, that this, God knows how this is going to play out now in America. So already things are very tense. But with this ruling, you have no idea how this is going to play out.
Well, I mean, again, legalese is something, I think sometimes it's intentionally written, so it's hard to understand. But even a person with interest, an average person interested in politics, and they see that it was the January 6th committee that was the predicate for all this decision making. That's when that's a clown show. I mean, what lasting effect did it have? None, zero. Okay, it was a predetermined thing, and its ratings. It didn't get ratings. People didn't watch it. It was a show. And you're saying that you're a district court in Colorado is making a world historic institutional decision based on that? That's like basing your decision on Saturday Night Live skits.
That's right. Where again, you didn't have an adversarial process, and I mean, obviously, it's not even a proper court of law. But even the minimum that congressional hearings have, which is that they do have some adversarial proceeding. There's a majority counsel, a minority counsel. You have witnesses. Witnesses are represented by attorneys and so on. And the minority gets to call their witnesses and so on. So at least you have some semblance of a legal proceeding. None of that was there. This was the whole purpose of this committee that Nancy Pelosi set up was precisely to go to the DOJ afterwards, hey, and say, now you can go please prosecute President Trump for us. We've got the bill of goods here against him. That's the only reason they set that up. I mean, it was already after the impeachment, so it had nothing to do with impeachment. Hey, they just wanted to present a a folder.
It was after he left office. For God.
That's right. And that's what happened. I said, oh, well, thank you very much. The DOJ did use that. I mean, Jack Smith did use this congressional, Nancy Pelosi's congressional committee as the evidence against Trump. That was the whole purpose. But a court of law, they can't just base it on that, and say, well, that's it. We've determined that we engaged in insurrection.
You and I, from particularly since the 2020 election, I think that some people might think we go into the realm of hyperbole, but this is trying to negate and erase half the electorate. Yeah. They're doing it. They're doing it. You and I talked about how they might do it and probably would do it, and now they are doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think they're telling the Republicans, you are to vote for Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. Those are your choices. We've determined what are your appropriate choices. You can't vote for whom you want to vote for. That is essentially a declaration of war against the public. We know better than you what's good for you, and you better do as we say, or else you don't want to end up in prison like all those January 6ers. And they're still arresting people. The amazing thing, more than 3 years now. Yes, is it 3 years? Yeah, 3 years since then. They're still arresting, grannies all over the country just to show, hey, this is what we're going to do to you. You try anything like this, that's a little granny, 80-year-old granny. Imagine what we do to you, who, you may be in your 30s or 40s. Hey, if she goes down for 10 years, imagine how many years you're going to do.
Well, and what this does is now Trump becomes a meme. He's not even a person. He is the resistance. He has become the head of the resistance, not the Republican Party, the resistance. Yeah. And a lot of independents, one of the things I think the outcome is, that considering the trajectory we're on right now, is that just as a lot of people are not going to get involved in the electoral process. They're just going to say it's not fair. It's so rigged. Like the 2020 election was rigged. George and I never said it was stolen, not once. Okay, rigged. We say it all the time. It was. Okay, and now it's being rigged again.
Well, I don't think anyone looking at those numbers in 2020 will conclude that this election was somehow on the up and up. Biden gets 81 million votes. He gets 16 million more votes than Obama, and that was a kind of the historic election.
George, we didn't have an investigation, and
there was never any proper investigation.
That's why it's so shameful. That's why you and I can smirk at this all day and all night long, and we have every right to do it because no one deigns to do the hard work.
No, okay. There wasn't. There was never a proper investigation, and so but the reform, the quote reforms unquote that were in place in 2020, they're still there, and they've got the whole apparatus there to go into action in 2024. You've got all of the nonsense that we had, the ballot stuffing, the drop boxes, the nursing home trolls.
Let me get this straight, George. Let me get this straight here. So Joe Biden is his popularity level in public opinion polls is 34%. I don't think Trump ever made it to 34. He was always in the low 40s. Okay, that's right. Yeah. But, Joe Biden is he's a path breaker here, but he's still going to win the election this time by 20 million. Really? That's really interesting how that works.
That's right. Yes, it is. It's
the more unpopular he is, the more votes he's going to get. Well, this is a new political calculus.
Right. No, that's right. And all of the characters from 2020, like Mark Elias, they're all there waiting to go into action with all their lawsuits and threats against anyone who will dare to call that election into question. So, it's already there. That's what they're preparing. All of the lawsuits, all of the threats of criminal prosecution for anyone who's going to call that election into question. So,
yep. So we have had, and things move slowly. George and I have been chronicling it. So essentially what we have here is the arsonists have taken over the fire department. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah. You've given it to the arsonists, and they're going to light that match. They are lighting that match. Yeah. Yeah. And we're all witnesses to it. You know, that's what the weird is. We see it happening in front of us in real time. Yeah. And, you know, it's like watching a huge catastrophe unfold right in front of you. And it's not even slow now.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very, very interesting. I mean, I think it's the characteristic of the Democratic Party. You know, it's obviously a much bigger subject, but the Democrats know that essentially they've lost the people. You know, whatever the Democrats once were under FDR, and, you know, even later on under Hubert Humphrey, that's not that party anymore. They're not able really to win elections. So the only thing they have at their disposal is cheating. And what are they most effective at is, you know, lawfare, because a lot of lawyers are Democrats and they've mastered all these techniques, and they know that we can use the courts. But they're also
professional managerial class knows spend.
That's it.
Because the professional managerial class doesn't give a hoot about democracy. If they get what they want using democracy, that's fine. But if they don't get what they want, then they could care less about it. And we see that right now.
And they are willing to destroy everything to get power. We saw from 2016 on that they were willing to trigger a war with Russia by manufacturing this ridiculous story about Putin stealing the election. They were willing to do that. And we're still living with the consequences of that. So now they're willing to trigger a civil war, figuring that they're going to get the better of it because they control the apparatus of the state. And so if it comes to a confrontation, they're going to be on the winning side because, hey, well, we control the armed forces, we control the police, and we're going to win this. And that may well be true, but that's their calculation, and it's a terrifying.
Remember, we have to end on this, but I can remember very well. I think it was in The Economist after Brexit, and that was that article. We have too much democracy. Yeah. There's too much democracy.
Too much democracy. Yeah, that's right.
And that's what they're going to say. See, you know, democracy can end in bad places, but we saved the day. We caught them. We caught them in the net of professionalism to make sure we can, you know, move it through. You know, I mean, they'll tell you all kinds of things. I mean, every time they lose a war, they somehow say they won it. Okay, so and that's exactly.
But that's it. It's a long-standing argument of theirs. There's too much democracy because they can't get the election outcomes that they want. It's all the time, whether it's Brexit or whether you know, Nixon wins a 49-state landslide or whether they vote for Trump. They can't get the results that they want, so they have to find other means of winning. And this is something that they're good at. You know, the legal profession is dominated by liberals and Democrats, and therefore they're going to use their strengths. And that, you know, that's why they've been successful so far. But it's a very dangerous game.
Very dangerous, and of course we'll keep an eye on it here. We'll see if anyone follows suit in between now and January 4th. But folks, we're on eggshells now, big time. All right, everyone, this is A Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Wednesday all day, and tomorrow is Thursday all day, which George will have his second live stream of the week.
Exactly. 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. Come with comments, criticism, ideas, suggestions, opinions. Everything is welcome. On the way out the door, think about little Buddy, because again, Buddy said, hey, lawsuit, I'm down for that. I'm going to start filing, you know, yet another lawsuit. It's always this thing with the tip jar, you know, that there's it's
can't let it go.
Buddy lawfare. Exactly. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we're going to keep Buddy away from those legal documents. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.